Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Live Real Talk, and my name is Kassim. We are talking about a very pertinent issue in this beloved country of ours. We are talking about a situation that has kept people tensed and on their feet. Some people, some countries outside the African continent, they have given travel advisories to their citizens because of the situation that we are talking about. The president, the Interior CS, together with the Interior PS, held the second security conference in Mombasa that culminated today with the president's speech. And we're going to talk more about that. We are talking about the state of security in our country. Our neighboring country, Somalia, they have a militia in it. And we are talking about Al-Shabaab that has struck more than 20 times in the past 5 years. At least 3 people died. Kenya, of course, being on the receiving end in all the East African countries, and Eastern Africa at large, being on the receiving end, getting some of the deadliest terror attacks in the region. In 5th January 2020, the U.S. Embassy military base in Lamu was attacked by the sub-militia, leaving at least 3 people dead. And on 7th January, that is 2 days later, in Garissa, they struck again, and at least 4 people were left dead. Remember, just 2 days ago, it was the first anniversary, at least marking 1 year since one of the deadliest attacks to have ever been experienced on this Kenyan soil. And joining me tonight to discuss that topic, we are having none other than a gentleman that you've seen before on this set. And again, he's here. He is the Associate Director, Center for Study on Terrorism, Violence, Extremism, Dr. Halkano Wario. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so
Karibu,
much.
how are you, sir?
Asante sana.
Kumzima. Welcome to our set.
Asante sana.
I'm
extremely grateful to be here.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, this is my second time on this set. And I'm delighted to share my own experience and my understanding of the current situation of security, generally not just in Kenya, but also in the Horn of Africa.
Lovely. Interesting. I'm sure I've not done due diligence in your introduction. Maybe there's something you want to add.
Okay.
I'm sure I've not done due diligence. I'm very sure about that.
Okay. My name is Dr. Alkano Abdi Wario.
Yes.
I'm a lecturer at Egerton University, and I'm also an associate director at Horn Institute. Horn Institute is independent, one of the premier research think tanks here in Nairobi that deals with issues of diplomacy, studies on transnational crime, economic issues, governance, the all IGAD region, starting from Eritrea all the way to Tanzania to Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Okay. And I work there as an associate director.
Karibu sana. Welcome so much. Remember, you can be part of this conversation. 0711 707 707 is our call-in live. Callers reach us directly on those lines. 21951 is our SMS line, and we are streaming live on YouTube as well. Kindly let us know what you think and be part of this conversation. Dr. What's your take on the current security set in this country?
The current security take in this country is a combination of a continuous engagement of Kenya's security situation that has sort of, in a way, escalating between, highs and lows of terrorism attack. What is extremely surprising is the attack that you mentioned at the U.S. air base in Manda. Given that it occurred a day after assassination of Kassim Soleimani in Iraq.
Yes.
Though these two events are not related,
exactly.
It shows the depth to which Kenya is embroiled in this broader attack by transnational criminal groups like Al-Shabaab. And aside from that, I think we are witnessing again this current focus of this group in Northeastern, especially on educational institutions, where teachers who are non-locals are attacked. In a way, this destabilizes the education system in this already fragile zone in Kenya. And this will culminate in ensuring that less and less of these citizens in this part of the country will have less access to education, and by that put them much more vulnerable to radicalization discourses in future.
Interesting. You've linked the death of Kassim Soleimani. Sorry, I'm just deviating a little bit. You've linked the death of Kassim Soleimani and the attack at the U.S. military base. Sorry, just for the benefit of our audience, what's the link between the two? Is there any link?
There is absolutely no link. Well, we cannot be entirely sure, but we need to put into perspective the differences between a group like Al-Shabaab that has affiliation with Al-Qaeda and a completely different security infrastructure in Iran. Iran is largely different in terms of ideological leaning to what is held by these groups of militant group like Al-Qaeda. So the link are entirely not there, though the closeness of attack between the two may give such group, a bigger figure within the transnational criminal groups like this, that, we are doing something big like that. But aside from that, there is absolutely probably no
connection as it is
link.
Because creed-wise, they're leading from different books.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
You've also mentioned on educational institutions, the attacks on educational institutions, particularly in the northeastern region. A few months ago, last year, actually around mid last year, there was the Prevention of Terrorism bill that particularly focused on education, and a lot of stakeholders in the security sector were against it. What do you think might be a long-term solution, particularly in this educational institution attacks?
I think, Kenyans everywhere have a right to education, and it is the responsibility of both the state and the communities to ensure that teachers who are posted to any part of Kenya are part and parcel of community protected by the same. So increasingly we have less and less people from northern parts of Kenya pursuing, for instance, education at the university level. What that means is that Kenyans from other parts of the country will have to definitely provide these services. And by that, I think the best solution around this is to ensure that education institutions in these fragile areas are protected from attacks by these
the government is in its own wisdom, because how do you tell a terrorist from a non-terrorist? How do you tell a threat from a non-threat? So the government in its wisdom, through the legislature, they came up with a bill, Prevention of Terrorism Bill, that would hold some of the stakeholders in the education institutions accountable when such attacks happen. But the stakeholders in the security industry refused that. They declined. Aside
from POTA that you mentioned, there are a couple of other legislative frameworks that have been put in place to fight radicalization of extremism in Kenya. And you remember there was the Security Law Amendment Act of 2012, and there are also other laws that have been passed, including the ones that give support to programs that are called counter-event extremism. For instance, the national strategy that is launched by the National Counterterrorism Center. Yes. So in terms of legislative frameworks that we have in place, we do not have actually a problem. What we have is to ensure that implementation is done across, and to ensure that communities lead this process of security and peace building, and to ensure that intelligence is shared in good time, and individuals who may harbor criminal intent are dealt with in good way, so that they do not necessarily threaten education institution or other institutions of the country.
What's your position on the Prevention of Terrorism Bill? Do you think it's something that should be adopted?
We require laws. We require laws at two levels. We require laws for what is in security studies called CT, or counterterrorism. We also require laws for countering violent extremism. These frameworks are important because they guide us. They ensure that individuals who are caught with crimes related with these must face justice, and in immediate and consummate way from the legal framework. So they are necessary, because crime of terrorism nature are much more transnational. They impact the economy much deeper than, for instance, car robbery or other forms of violence. And in a way, without laws, we may not necessarily have a way of fighting it. What is required is to ensure that when these laws are made, it is made through consensus with the larger citizenry, or implemented through the consent of the larger citizenry.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Dr. We often find ourselves as Kenyans, excuse me, we often find ourselves as Kenyans more or less in the same situation over and over again. Seems like we never learn. As a country, our security agencies, seems like we never learn. we are one of the few countries in this region, actually the only country that have been on the receiving end on these terror attacks.
Exactly.
It seems like we never learn.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation because we share probably over 900 kilometers of open border with Somalia. Somalia has been without government since 1991.
But you're not the only one who's sharing a border with Somalia.
Ethiopia does, yes, and Ethiopia has also different arrangement in terms of fighting radicalization and extremism. But the reason why, for instance, Kenya becomes such a lucrative area for violent extremism to carry out attack is we have immense presence of international organizations. We are a regional hub. Kenya is, we can comparably be seen to, like, if for instance we look at Africa as a whole, Nigeria is a hub for the western part of Africa. Egypt is a hub for northern part of Africa. South Africa is a hub for southern Africa. For East Africa, we are the country that hosts international organizations. We have a vibrant economy. We have a population that is active in democracy and so on. Definitely, because of this media presence, terrorism loves media. Terrorism is a media-related event that publicizes itself through this specter of violence and tragedy. And therefore, by virtue that we share a very close border with that, they keep coming. I think we also need to give credit to the fact that despite sharing this long border, we've seen less and less attack in the last years. For instance, between Westgate and Dusit, this was quite a
big span. I agree. Yeah. But still, the fact still remains, one, it's too much.
Exactly.
One still remains too much. We have some views from Kenyans that we got earlier on today. So maybe let's hear what Kenyans on the streets of Nairobi particularly had to say regarding the state of security in this country. Suleiman.
Mimi ni mkaaji wa Nairobi na pia ni Mkenya. Mimi nasikitika sana kwa nchi yetu kwa yale majanga ambaye inapata kila mara kuhusu magaidi wanayotuvamia. Na mimi kwangu mimi, kwa maoni yangu, nasema kwamba huu ni utepetevu tu wa vyombo za dola pamoja na sheria ambayo imewekwa katika nchi hii. Manake nchi hii ina sheria nzuri sana, lakini wale ambao wahusika kuanzia kwa wale wakubwa wa usalama hawachukui maanani. Serikali kidogo pia katika nchi hii imeruhusu wageni kuingia bila ruhusa ama bila stakabadhi ambazo zinatakana. Ndio maana unaona ugaidi unafanyika kiholela tu, na magaidi wako na uwezo wa kutembea bila kuzuiwa.
It's very sad to see our friends, our relatives being killed like animals, being slaughtered like animals. And for the government or for this issue to stop, I think the first problem that we have in this country is just corruption. Because even those people called the policemen, the military, these people, actually they are not there because they wanted that job, but because they wanted just to pay. It's not from the last passion, but it's because some of them, they bribed so that they got, and then they get that job. But actually those people who are ready to serve the citizens, to serve the country, they are there roaming in their homes without a job.
My reaction, because we are in a tourism industry, which is very, very, very sensitive. If they do it very publicly, it will affect us very negatively. What I would advise, they can only use the intelligence. If they use their intelligence, that will be very fine, because putting it in the public domain, this business is very, very fragile. It will affect us in so many ways. Not only the international tourists, even the local tourists. They could have the information, let them put proper measures, and they send the intelligence, the security forces where they know the attack might happen, but not publicly. It is good to for the public to have information, but they should see a way how to make that information reach the people. The people should also share information. Yeah, some people have even collaborated. Terrorists don't even come from Kenya only, not from outside the country. There are also Kenyans who are radicals, and they don't care about their country. First of all, we should begin with first loving our country first. We should love our country. One, they should think of withdrawing and let those security forces be back in our country, and then make sure we are secure in our borders. I don't see the business why they should continue being in Somalia. They should be back here.
Labda kitu serikali ingefanya ni kuongeza wanajeshi. Unajua hawako serious na hawa Al-Shabaab. Wangekuwa serious wenye walimaliza Mungiki. Hiyo ni kitu kidogo kwa serikali. Kwa hivyo ni venye tu hawataki kumaliza. Ni kama mchezo wa paka na panya wanafanya nao. Ni vizuri wa serikali ieleze, kwa sababu ikieleza wananchi watakuwa aware kwa kile kitu ambayo kinafanyika. Yeah.
The government security officials are having their conference in Mombasa to discuss matters security. We believe they will come up with a long-lasting solution to this menace that have claimed hundreds of our citizens. Nasir Hassan, Horizon TV.
Thank you so much, Nasir Hassan, for that report and that information from the Nairobians on the streets of Nairobi. Thank you so much, Nasir Hassan, for that. Dr. You've heard it for yourself, Kenyans talking and lamenting. And interesting enough, it's something that I had also noted down, leaking borders, over 900 kilometers, still not as secure as it should be. Still, we're having porous borders as a country. Do you think it's time, just as one of the Kenyans said right there, do you think it's time for the soldiers to retreat and secure our borders more than they are going to advance and flush out the terrorists?
I think, Faisal, for this question, the answer is neither here nor there, because Kenya Defense Force is part and parcel of United Nations-backed African mission in Somalia, AMISOM. So AMISOM is set to withdraw from the year 2020, 2021 onward. So we are yet to see the timeline that AMISOM has set aside for purpose of withdrawing from Somalia. AMISOM has done considerable work. Well, if we gauge success versus failure in terms of pushing this criminal group from control of some of the key ports that they had controlled for years. So the idea that Kenya can withdraw unilaterally within that framework away from the AMISOM arrangement will be something that may not be able to be done without that. But even given that the situation in Somalia has not stabilized, we may not see necessarily that the withdrawal of Kenya will mean less and less of attack from these criminal gangs. And so my opinion around this is based on stabilization of Somalia itself. Somalia has a very fragile federal government in Mogadishu. There is all the federal member states have their own presidents, and there is a big rivalry, for instance, between the federal state and the center. Villa Somalia, so to speak. And these criminal gangs now take advantage of this existing tussle between the central government and the federal government. And then you throw in now geopolitical interest that has grown over years. So many powers across the world, Turkey, United States, Qatar, UAE, are all interested in Somalia.
So you think we should continue having our forces in Somalia at the expense of having a vulnerable state in country? The
withdrawal of Kenya from Somalia must be within the framework that they had joined, that of AMISOM. So withdrawal of AMISOM may often signal withdrawal of Kenyan forces, but at the same time, I think it is the prerogative of the state to see how much security will be enhanced by our presence or absence within Somalia.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. for that. We also had the president, excuse me, we had the president again earlier on talking about when he was culminating the security conference. Suleiman Joseph Tumbo, do you have the clip before you go for a very short break? Do you have the clip and the speech of the president?
Our most grave national security challenge, as you all know, is terrorism. And indeed, I applaud the efforts made by our multi-agency structure to preempt a very large number of planned attacks and terrorist operations. And I also recognize and applaud the individual acts of bravery by security officers who have faced the enemy directly and showed immense resolve that did the officers, their agency, and indeed our nation proud. Last year, I did indeed task the county commissioners and police commanders to upscale the intensity and efficacy of our security work and coordination. I did indeed ask you to hold more barazas to increase information flow from the public concerning terrorist operatives, recruiters, and propagandists, and this needs to be sustained, if not intensified, this year. In addition to you doing more to make communities feel safe from terrorist intimidation. This sense of safety and freedom from intimidation or retaliation from terrorist elements will encourage even more people to speak up and resist the tactics of terrorists. Last year, I ordered county commissioners to coordinate with the National Counter-Terrorism Center, headed by Ambassador Kimani, to ensure that every county has launched and is implementing a county action plan for the prevention and countering of violent extremism. I'm happy to know that that was indeed achieved. These efforts should rally our protection of communities, especially in the northeastern region and parts of the coast region, that, as we all know, have witnessed an escalation in terrorist attacks, typified by the targeting of public facilities, security officers, public transport vehicles, and critical infrastructure. The people of Kenya should rest assured that we will respond robustly and that our nation, Kenya, will and shall prevail. So to that end, today, I want to direct that the following actions be undertaken to immediately upgrade our response. Firstly, security officers are to mount operations to flush out terrorist operatives and all sleeper cells in our midst, especially in the northeastern and coastal regions. Secondly, all relevant officers, agencies, and personnel are to drive the determined implementation of the county action plans to prevent and counter violent extremism. Doing this will allow citizens to be more resilient against radicalization and terrorist propaganda. The implementation of these measures needs to be undertaken in a systematic and measurable way. And to that end, I will expect a report on the practical undertakings and efforts with respect to the same by the end of August of this year. Thirdly, the national government administrative officers and police are to engage local politicians, religious and opinion leaders within vulnerable communities as a proactive strategy to deny terrorism entry points into the radicalization, especially of our youth. They should utilize the prevention capabilities underlying the county action plans so as to ensure that local violent extremist networks and recruiters are denied, and I repeat, denied any space to operate within communities. Lastly, I want you to further synergize the efforts, capabilities, and resources of national government administrative officers and the National Police Service to deliver on the common mandate of ensuring public safety and security for the country.
Thank you so much, Suleiman Tumbo, for that. And of course, I need to give a special appreciation to the Nation Television, Nation TV, that is NTV, for lending us the clip. Thank you so much, Nation TV. And without further ado, we're going to go for a very short break, but please do not go away. Also, before you go for the break, I need to apologize for all the missed calls. As you saw, the discussion was quite heated, but make sure to call when you come back from the break, because we are going to pick up your call after this break.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Ni kauli ya wengi, mwanamke na kijiko, wakajitahidi kwa makundi kubeba wao mwiko. Mapishi na Remi, mwamko mpya katika tajriba ya upishi, kufundisha na kuunganisha jamii katika ubora wake mwanamke wake jikoni.
Coming soon on Horizon TV.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Islam has permitted acquisition of wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says,
فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَانْتَشِرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ.
To understand clearly Islamic perspective on wealth management, join me, Khalfan Abdullah, on Trials of Wealth to learn more on concept of wealth in Islam, wealth creation, wealth spending, wealth protection, and many more based on Quran and Sunnah.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Thank you so much, Suleiman Tumbo, for the countdown. Asante sana. Daktari, we are talking about the state of security in this country, and we just had the president before we went for the break, rather. What's your take on the president's directive about the multi-agency report, the proactiveness that he's talking about? And I'm sure this is the first time he's talking about that. What's your take on that?
One of the most tangible take-home message from the president's speech is the focus on the county action plan, for instance. We have 47 counties in Kenya. All the counties at the moment have their own county action plan, based on the experiences and the particularities of violent extremism trends that they may experience, from West Pokot to Mombasa to Turkana to Narok, and entirely. And this development of county action plan is based on the experience that if we let the communities lead the process of ensuring that counter-terrorism is done from the very beginning by the communities, then we have a better chance at having better results.
In a layman's language?
Yeah, in a layman's language is, these action plans are based on the understanding that communities are best placed to solve the problem of radicalization before it occurs. When it occurs, it becomes the business of counterterrorism agencies. Now security structure like ATPU and the specialized security agencies and intelligence become now the main actors. But this other aspect focusing on these stakeholders. Stakeholders are broad here. Religious scholars, for instance, the Muslim scholars are included. Women, youth, politicians, the devolved government structures like the governors and the county governors and and the rest, and the national government administrators on the ground are expected to work together to see how they can use the plans that have been put in place in order to address this problem before it occurs. Because once it occurs, it becomes now the prerogative of the security agencies to deal with it. Does it work? Does it not work? I think one of our tragedy as a country is focusing on production of so many legal structures vis-a-vis implementation frameworks. But the beautiful thing about this county action plan is it has a very robust implementation matrices. For instance, if you go to Mombasa, the committee that deals with this is the governor and the county commissioner chairing on how to address this problem at the grassroots level. So the security structures take backstage in this. They deal with, the real counterterrorism issues and allow the communities to ensure that our youth, men and women, do not necessarily cross over to Somalia. Because one of the tragedies that we have in Kenya is almost all the attacks that we are experiencing currently are people who are part of our country. They are not necessarily Somalis. So we need to understand how to ensure that people do not necessarily find it attractive to go to this other country. And I think all these stakeholders, including religious institutions, have a very strong role to play.
You have been engaged in a number of research as an institution. Have you done a research on detection of a threat from a non-threat?
For instance, at the Horn Institute, we've developed tools that have been adopted by so many local organizations and also across the region that helps us understand, for instance, early warning signs. How do we know that this individual, for instance, is prone towards joining this radical group? Faisal, our challenge in this country is not necessarily a group that comes from Somalia, but our own youth who find it attractive to join these groups and then finally come back as...
We're going to get to that in details, but again, the question here is...
Yes.
Can I identify a threat from a non-threat?
A threat from a non-threat. Now, if you put it within the perspective of the communities, this is where the community policing works. For instance, Kenya, with varied experience, had tried to implement what is called Nyumba Kumi, where individuals in a community decide and say that so-and-so is going to lead us in ensuring that anything that happens wrongly are dealt with within us, and so that the security agencies are going to be informed about.
That's reactive.
That's
so even before that happens, the question is, have you done a research that a layman like me can identify a threat from a non-threat?
Yes, if, for instance, you look at the handbooks that have been done by Brave, especially in counter-narrative production, we have we've based on empirical research and came up with a couple of handbooks that have been translated both in Swahili and in English that can help us understand some of the threats that arises from the communities and help address it before it bursts out into violent extremism signs. Okay. And of course, this may look as if one can be profiled from, someone may depict signs of, say, quote-unquote radicalization, but this could be a lifestyle that they have chosen. They are not necessarily a threat to others. So one of the problems that is at the center of this kind of understanding is we may profile individuals who are not necessarily a threat to us. We may also overlook individuals who are not who are a threat to us. Why? Groups that have criminal mind know very well how to hide, how to camouflage, how to ensure that they can move within the society without being detected. Take the example of, for instance, Dusit attack. Nobody within that structure will have actually identified these individuals as threatening from the look that they have. So in a way, we need to move from profiling of individuals based on specific characteristics to understanding the real issues that move these individuals to join this group. This is where the community is coming now.
Thank you so much. And you clearly mentioned that the aspect, the radicalization aspect is still in our midst.
It's still quite
and
active.
And the
yeah.
threat, as you've clearly said, if I can quote you, the threat is not the people coming from outside to attack, but the people within who are Kenyans as well, who are moved and who feel the traction to move and join the militia. Radicalization is still a problem.
Yes, it's still a big problem. As long as Somalia is unstable, as long as this group still churn out very, attractive videos and counter narratives that make individuals within Kenya feel attracted to these materials. Yes.
That on the other hand, your organization and the sister organization building the sister movement, building resilience against violence extremism, should be countering such together with the security agencies in the country.
Yes, we've quite engaged in the last 5 years or more in this realm, and we've worked with communities. And I think one very important point that we can mention is that the handbooks, the manuals that have been developed, for instance, by our sister organization Brave, has been even sort of emulated by countries outside Kenya. Like, for instance, Zanzibar has developed its own manual for fighting this radicalization based on Brave's one. Nigeria, for instance, faces
DIN, the international network.
Exactly.
Of course, they've also embraced. But again, I'm looking at the situation in our country. I'm contextualizing it. I'm bringing the situation back home. We are looking at radicalization still far. It's still in our midst. It's still happening in our country. 5 years Brave's existence. We're having the security agencies. Why are we still having issues with radicalization?
It's a multifaceted phenomenon, and I think to address it, it takes much more than counter-narrative production. For instance, what attracts individuals to radical group are not necessarily ideological reasons, for instance. Not only that, someone may be attracted to the rhetorics that these criminal gangs churn out, and they feel as if that is the interpretation of our religion.
Metadata.
And so they go. Others are attracted because they are offered incentives, jobs. And in Kenya, of course, the statistics are very grim in terms of youth employment. Others are attracted because they have grievances against the nation state. Others are attracted for wide range, adventure, and so on. So I think the best way to deal with this problem of youth joining these groups is to ensure that multi-pronged approach is done. If religious leaders can play a certain part, let them do it. Let the communities own this process and understand that. And again, on the side of the state, it's also important that when they deal with issues of radicalization or extremism, they have to do within the due process. Law must be followed. Extrajudicial killing must be reduced. Enhanced disappearance must be dealt with. When you deal with suspect, deal with suspect as you deal with any other suspect. Let due process be used. But at the same time, the communities must also own the process of ensuring that none of their members get attracted to.
Talking about the community is quite ambiguous in this case. It's quite wide who we're really referring to. You have the necessary tools to, and you have done the necessary research.
Yes.
So you are well equipped. So where does it start? Again, as I'm saying, we had Dr. Mustafa here twice on the set, and we spoke about radicalization, and he spoke about the meta narratives that you guys on the other hand are trying so hard to get counter narratives on that. Did you think that should be the start point?
That is of course a very important start point, because as you know, when criminal gangs carry out their activities, they always use religion as a cover to ensure that it makes sense to the person for whom it's attracted. It's presented as the pure Islamic understanding of things.
So the burden lies with Horn Institute and Brave.
And every other Muslim across Kenya. At the same time, not all
Muslims have the necessary tools to do the research and disseminate information.
Yes, what perhaps is much more important is how can we create continuous capacity development of our religious leaders, our religious institution, including mosques, and
the Muslim community,
in general,
the Kenyan community,
and so that when these talks are done increasingly, very frequently on members across Kenya, and it's continuously challenged, then these groups that try to misinterpret or package religious teaching for political reasons will have less and less inroad into the community. In
2016, your sister organization, Brave, of course, I know that was great support from you because you provided the research aspect, and then all they did was just to put it in a booklet form and actually spread the information. You did a lot of above the line marketing. You went heads on, you went billboards,
TVs,
you went TVs, you went all that. Media, mainstream and social media, quite vigorous. But again, eventually it toned down.
And I think we need to bear in mind that this was the first innovative and premier program that were targeted largely to the Muslim community by Muslim religious scholars and researchers. One very positive aspect that came out of this is it opened up the space. For the first time, you can watch NTV and get the advert, for instance, the Brave one. You can talk in mosques about this. Before that, if you can remember, any religious institution that tried to challenge these violent extremist groups were actually targeted by their sympathizers or themselves. So in a way, it opened up the space. It allowed.
My concern is, since then, we've not seen other above the line vigorous activations.
There are programs coming up in this year where, for instance, Brave, based on the review from the communities about how they understood the problem, we reviewed the book that was used for purpose of teaching and training of religious scholars, so much so that there's now a revised handbook almost probably going to be launched in a couple of months from now, which is much more based on our robust understanding of how terrorism has evolved since the first production of the material.
Maybe the next question, the dissemination of the information that you guys gather and the counter narratives that you guys gate, how far do you disseminate this information?
What Brave did, from my understanding of the sister organization, is to have a structure across the country. So in every single county across Kenya, Muslim religious leaders have been co-opted to be part of the ambassadors of peace and ambassadors of Brave for purpose of ensuring that these materials are understood within the perspective of the local understanding of the problem. For instance, a specific counter-narrative may make much more sense in Kwale than it will make sense in Mandera. So the Brave material is modeled on the understanding that each region can try to customize this understanding within it. But also, Brave's material are not independent of the other CVE programming. For instance, in each of these counties, one of the pillars that are seen to be strong in trying to address this problem of radicalization is religious ideologies. So even the county action plans allow for use of this kind of manuals within the training within that. So we are hoping probably much more stakeholder engagement around that. So each individuals, each organization, the national government, the county government must see what resources do we have already on the ground before we start inventing a wheel. So what this provides us is to use the proverbial understanding is we don't necessarily need to invent the wheel. We already have the wheel on the ground. How can we customize it within our own understanding? And I'm happy that you are giving scholars across the spectrum to talk about these at the national level.
Thanks so much, Dr. One thing, sometimes you might be privy to some information, to some intelligence, and at times we see the government actually giving warnings to the general public about some possible attacks in some areas. What's your take on that? Do you think the government should be disseminating this information?
It is the responsibility of the government to take care of the citizenry across the country. And if a warning is given, especially by foreign embassies, is they may have an understanding of us. I have absolutely no private information about this, but my understanding will be is if the government says there could be attack around this, please be careful. They have networks. They collaborate with intelligence organizations across the world, across the region. And so we may necessarily have to take this information very seriously. And I think it is, they are doing their work in that.
Do you think it should be the information should be given, should be let out to the public as well?
If it allows for protection of life, if it allows for protection of properties, if it can keep us all safe, I think it's extremely important. What I find worrying is when, for instance, foreign embassies give restriction against moving in certain parts of Kenya, and this affects tourism industry, for instance, in Lamu right now, where most of the foreign embassies have said, go 60 kilometers away from the Kenya-Somalia border is not necessarily safe, Lamu is not unsafe. And so they are also doing not necessarily for Kenyans, but for their own citizens who may go to these areas and become targeted. So but of course, as we understood, these criminal gangs attack both Kenyans and non-Kenyans.
Interesting. We have another clip that we asked Kenyans on the street again, what they think about disseminating these threats to the general public. Does it cause fear or it makes Kenyans to be more vigilant? Let's see what
inafaa kutujulisha, na pia kuna mahali penye inaweza leta uoga, lakini kwangu mimi ikijulisha mapema itakuwa vizuri. Watu wataishi wakijua kwamba hapa lazima tuwe makini na tuweze kujimudu, ili wakija tuweze kujizuia ama tuwe macho kabisa. Hilo swala la kutujulisha ni muhimu sana kwangu mimi. Lazima tujulishwe, tuwe kila wakati tuko tayari kulinda maisha yetu. Manake tusiachie tu maisha serikali, lazima sisi pia tuyalinde maisha yetu. So kitujulisha itakuwa vema sisi kulinda maisha yetu mapema.
My reaction, because we are in a tourism industry which is very, very, very sensitive. If they do it very publicly, it will affect us very negatively. What I would advise, they can only use the intelligence. If they use their intelligence, that will be very fine, because putting it in the public domain, this business is very, very fragile. It will affect us in so many ways. Not only the international tourists, even the local tourists. They could have the information, let them put proper measures, and they send the intelligence, the security forces, where they know the attack might happen, but not publicly. It is good for the public to have information, but they should see a way how to make that information reach the people.
Thank you so much. And Dr. we've had some of the feedback from Kenyans, some of them feeling that it is important to be notified when such threats come through. Others feel that it's causing more harm than good. It's bringing about fear. Dr. maybe as we are winding up, structural long-term solutions for this menace?
One, I think, is development. And development is a very broad word, if we could put it that way. But when you have infrastructure like roads, like education, like health facilities, like employment for the youth, like access to social amenities, you have less and less attraction towards this. Two, redress of these issues that are capitalized by groups like Al-Shabaab and so on. What do they capitalize on? They capitalize on identity, for instance, and claim that our communities are less citizens than the rest of Kenyans. How can we ensure that identity documents are available to these Kenyans in this part of the region? Grievances against the nation state, how can we address it? How can we address historical injustice, for instance, ensuring that communities feel they are part and parcel of this nation? And resource distribution. For instance, I'm quite glad that we have this devolved structure at the moment, where now you no longer look to Nairobi as the marginalizing center. You now look to Mombasa, you look to Lamu, you look to Kilifi, you look to whatever. So when you devolve government, you allow for development to occur quite at the grassroots level. Of course, there's also different marginalization that occurs now in the counties, but how can we ensure that these counties that have for a long period been outside the national development have much more resources? We have equalization fund, for instance. How can we ensure that equalization fund is used in a way to address the problem of radicalization, not just under development? Then I think we also need better information sharing between the state and non-state actors. The communities sometimes feel if you go and tell the policeman about this, they may become victimized. But how can we ensure that the community policing is community-led policing, not just community policing? And so sensitization is extremely important. But I think the most long-term solution to the problem we are facing in Kenya is Somalia. If we have peaceful Somalia, if we have Somalia that has an inclusive government where nobody feels outside the nation state's resources, then we have better neighbors. And this problem will generally be low. So whether it is by defeat or probably by political solution, they must find a solution to the problem of instability in Somalia for us to have a peaceful Kenya, especially in this part of north and the coast. And I think also related with that is the there's so much interest. There's so much happening, for instance, in Somalia in the last couple of years and in the coming months. They are having an election, for instance,
yes,
which is one man, one vote, which they have never done since 1991 or before that. So stability there will definitely has impact on this problem of insecurity that we're having at the moment. And it's my hope and prayer that probably one day these will go behind us as historical moments of mishap, and then we get back the good road.
Amen. And thank you so much, Dr. Thank you so much. I mean, an amazing discussion. A lot of texts coming through, a lot of calls coming through. For all our viewers back at home who've been calling, I'm sorry I'm not the one who refused to pick up your calls. My director and producer tonight, Suleiman of Tumbo, has been disconnecting those calls because he was so much engrossed into this discussion and did not want to miss any part of Dr. Halkano Orio. I'm just getting some texts that say, Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum, your phone is always busy, how can you reach you? Oh, Jamia Mosque, I'm so sorry again, not me, that is Suleiman. Another one says, Assalamu alaikum, that is from 0757. Another one says, Assalamu alaikum, mashallah. Good job. Another one from Moyale says, Assalamu alaikum, host Kassim. Says, Assalamu alaikum to Daktari. Tell him we are watching him live from Moyale. Abu Ismail Godana is watching you from Moyale. Another one says, Assalamu alaikum. Sema assalamu alaikum, mada yenyu ni ya Kiswahili alafu mwongea Kizungu hatuelewi. Pole. Assalamu alaikum. Anyway, a lot of texts coming in that Suleiman won't allow me to read. My ticket to slumber tonight is going to be quite short because we are in January, the first month of the year, 2020, and a lot of you viewers back at home are either taking your kids to school or you are students yourself and you're resuming school. Remember the first verse to be revealed out of the whole Quran to the Prophet, peace be upon him, was Iqra, read in the name of the Lord who created. So this shows the importance of education. B.B. King, a wise man, what did he say? The beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take it away from you. When you go out of your way and acquire wealth at some point, billah, God forbid, someone can come and snatch it away from you. You go get some possessions, some assets, God forbid someone can take it away from you. But the moment you acquire education, quality education, proper knowledge, then no one can take it away from you. So as you're getting out of your house every morning, getting out of your dormitory every morning, heading to the classroom to get knowledge, know that this is one of the greatest assets that you'll go with it up to your grave. And that has been our ticket to slumber. Thank you so much, Mohammed Samobura, who's just behind this camera. Thank you so much, Idris, who's been taking snap. Thank you so much, Suleiman of Tumbo. Sound engineer, Professor Mohammed Dutrayo. Hamid Salim on the background. We have Isa Sao, Ibrahim Muhammad, our senior technician. Salma Salim, Mariam Mocharo, thank you so much. Our editors. And Dr. Alkano, thank you so much for making time to be here with us.
Thank you.
And of course, our viewers, thank you so much for keeping us company. I'm sorry for your calls that were disconnected. Of course, that was not me. I already told you who did that. I mean, I'm sure right now he's playing the end credits, and you can see his name there, the producer of this show, Suleiman of Tumbo. But I still love you so much, inshallah. Let's meet next week, same place, same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Ni kauli ya wengi, mwanamke na kijiko, wakajitahidi kwa makundi kubeba wao mwiko. Mapishi na Remi, mwamko mpya katika tajriba ya upishi, kufundisha na kuunganisha jamii katika ubora wake mwanamke wake jikoni.
Coming soon on Horizon TV.